Welcome back to another episode of Kicking It with Coach Red, where we bring you all the news, stories, takes, and opinions about your favorite teams from the Pacific Northwest, from the good to the bad to the Mariners.
The kind of in it still Mariners.
They're in it to win it.
They're trying to be pesky now.
Not going to talk about the Mariners tonight, though. We have the start of the NFL season is now underway, and the Seahawks come out on top on their week one home matchup versus the Broncos, and we are going to break that down in this episode in great detail.
Yeah.
But before we do that,
Sure.
why don't I tell you a little bit about us? If you're looking for a guy that is calm, cool, collected, like our new head coach, Mike Macdonald, and also would really love a nice neck rub from Beast Mode. If you're looking for a guy like that in game, I mean, you're looking for a guy like me, boy, Coach Red. You can find me on X at the Real Coach Red, on Instagram at the Real _ Coach Red, TikTok at the Real Coach Red. Also, find the show over on YouTube. Search Kicking It with Coach Red. Like, subscribe, hit the bell notification, leave a comment or two. If you're looking for a guy that potentially in this episode might come out air rocky, but I'm really expecting him to make some adjustments in the second half of the episode to really bring this thing home, just like our good friend, offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb. If you're looking for a guy like that, you're looking for a guy like Cain.
Yes, I'm Kane. You can find me over on Twitter, Kane2406, TikTok, Kane0624. Also follow the show's socials over on Twitter and Instagram at Coach Red Pod. Follow us. Do it, freaking do it.
Mariners coming, or not the Mariners, Seahawks coming out on top.
Oh,
Still got the Mariners on the brain. Sorry. I've talked about them a lot this
yeah,
year.
sure have.
Seahawks come out on top 26-20. Kind of breakdown. I've got the scoring breakdown of the entire game here. First quarter, Will Lutz knocks in a 35-yard field goal. Jason Myers counters in the first quarter with a 50-yarder. In the second quarter, the Denver Broncos do something that is rare, and it was so nice. They did it twice. They got a couple of safeties in that quarter. Will Lutz knocks home two field goals, a 30-yarder and a 45-yarder. Geno Smith with a 34-yard dash, failed two-point conversion. Come out after half, and Seahawks really start rolling. You got a 23-yard touchdown run by Kenneth Walker, a.k.a. K9. Myers knocks in a 28-yard field goal. Smith in the fourth quarter throws a 30-yard tutty to Zach Charbonnet. And then Nix at the end rushes in for a 4-yard TD with Lutz on the extra point. Put it all together, and what do you got? 26-20.
Yeah. And as we kind of stated, the first half, they did start out very slow in offense.
It was ugly for everybody in the first half.
It was not great, but I'll tell you, that little Geno scramble rushing touchdown. Duo, he snatched that linebacker's soul.
Geno was the top speed Seahawk on Sunday.
That's nuts, dude.
On that
touchdown, I didn't realize he had the speed like that.
The first 10 years were nothing. The next 10. Oh, no,
I didn't realize he was fast like that, dude.
It just doesn't have to show it. And the one thing is, I was talking, missed the game live, so I had to rewatch it after the fact. Heard it was in the middle of playing softball. Actually, I have a couple of Broncos fans on the team, and the point I made was, this team should be a lot better offensively than they were showing in the first half. Like, well, no, they shouldn't. Geno Smith, he's not great. You don't need Geno Smith to be great. I wouldn't say Brock Purdy is great, but when you look at the offensive weapons that this team has, and early on, the offensive line did not look great. And especially when you lose George Fant in the first half and Stone Forsythe comes in. Bradford ended up getting sat for a little bit. Christian Haynes got a little bit of run. Like Tomlinson looked a little rusty. Same thing with Connor Williams. I think Cross played a solid game. There was a couple of times where he was getting beat, but overall, I think that with the offensive line, they haven't really played together as a group yet. And
Right.
this team is so much better when Abe Lucas is in the starting lineup. It's bonkers how much better this offensive line is with him in there. Right now, as we're sitting here, Tuesday night, planned on recording last night, but weren't able to get it done. We still don't really have many updates from Macdonald on K9 and Fant. He said, came out yesterday and said, they're day to day right now. I'm more optimistic on K9 because he even came out and said he's fine, probably a little precautionary. They've got the lead. You've got
But the Fant
Charbonnet.
one,
You got
that one's a
McIntosh on this
little
team. You can probably gadget in a little bit of LaVisca Chenault if you really wanted to in the running back room. But George Fant comes off the sideline when he goes out injured. There wasn't a lot of force going on. It wasn't like a high impact play. And for him to grab the knee, I don't love that. It's probably MCL, but I don't know what grade.
I'll
Really
take
don't
an
know.
MCL over something worse, right?
Yeah, but I think with this, it really puts a light on Stone Forsyth and really gives a path potentially for Michael Gerald to actually get some run with this team. Where I'm looking at this team, I guess I was gonna break down stats, but guess what? We're going off script, and my biggest concern right now is the offensive line, how they're playing, the Fant injury, how that's going to play out. You know, we we've seen Stone Forsyth last year. He's had some good games. He's had some very poor games. Gerald coming out from D2 with the physique that he has, the dude can move bodies in the run game. Can he hold up to NFL pass rushers? I don't think he can do that just yet, right?
Just give it a little bit of time.
This is a diamond in the rough type prospect. He's got the physical ability and the tools, but he hasn't faced that level of competition, right? So being able to see it's a little bit easier facing the rest of the guys that Finley was playing, and you're not going to be lining up against Nick Bosa.
Right. Let's, for what it was, the offensive line did all right for a sense, right? Denver is not a very good team. Their best player is Patrick Surtain the second. Like that's hands down the best player on their entire roster. Their team is not very good
I
in the
thought
grand
their
scheme of
starting tight
things.
end was Greg Dulcich, but it's actually Adam Troutman. So, and they've got Cortland Sutton, and they're keeping Troy Franklin around, so Bobo Nix feels nice and warm and has his duck with him. But that's a guy who I think's probably, I don't think I saw him on the field once. And you
I think
just
he's
look at,
injured.
and then you looked at Vele, who was a later round pick who actually got some run in this game.
I
So
mean, the only thing that kind of killed them, they had about 2 or 3 big runs that they didn't stop. I believe one was by McLaughlin, the other was by Williams, and then you had the touchdown run on with Bo Nix. But here's one thing, dude. This defense kind of looks
hold on,
stout.
we're not even there yet. Okay, what are your areas of concern?
Oh, with the offense,
I don't care. It's with the team.
it's still the offensive line. The same thing with you. I mean, because the offensive line is what keeps the offense going. Let's be honest here, right? If Gino doesn't have time, nothing's gonna develop. And the run game looked pretty good from the Seahawks.
In the second half.
K9 is
In the second half.
just disgusting.
That's my other area of concern is how injured is K9, because you see how much of a difference maker he is for this offense.
Yes.
The dude's amazing.
Yeah, I mean his juke prowess is incredible.
It's filthy.
Yeah. But I think their big glaring hole right now is their offensive line. And I think it's gonna be like that until we get Abe Lucas back. And then you can kind of fill in the pieces on the inside.
I'm hoping you get
And
a
Connor
little bit more.
Williams back
I think you
too.
get a little bit more gel as you go along. You prefer to do it a little bit in the preseason, but with the way that that's constructed now, and especially with Connor Williams really not getting any play and limited reps during camp too, right? Coming back from injury. So it'll be really interesting to see how they take on a cross country flight over to New England. But before we get to there, let's talk some stats, Mr. Statosaurus Rex.
Ooh,
We're just going to talk
stats.
some Seahawks stats. So Geno Smith was the only one that attempted any passes. He was 18 for 25 for 171 yards, one touchdown, one interception. Interception comes from a little bit of poor line play, kind of gets bumped while he's throwing the ball early on.
And then they held them to a field goal.
Yeah,
So
not the
that was
best
pretty
game
great.
from Geno. There were some things I especially looked at Grub and selfishly because I have JSN in fantasy where it was like back-to-back plays. JSN just looking smooth, catch the ball a couple times. Then they go to him a third time on that drive, gets negated by a penalty. Later on the game, catches another pass negated by a penalty. I was looking for Grub to scheme up a little bit more like you saw at Washington, but it's also his first game in the NFL, right? Vance Joseph is no slouch at calling a defense. This guy is well regarded in the league as a defensive play caller. So I can live with what we saw from Geno, but we're going to need to see a step forward. And I think what you really saw is Geno got more comfortable in the second half when they really started establishing the run, which I think is going to be a Mike Macdonald staple. And you saw Grubb do it at times last year. You look at Dylan Johnson down the stretch at UW. The dude went from, all right, he's an okay back until that USC game and on. Like, this guy is the lifeblood of the team. Like, yeah, you've got Heisman contender Michael Penix. You've got a bevy of guys. You have three wide receivers. One went in the first, one went in the second, one went in the third. And he could scheme up some plays for them and the tight ends. But Dylan Johnson really was the motor that kept that boat afloat down the stretch. And you're going to see that at times with K9 and with Charbonneau. And I think you can really see you saw some flashes from Charbonneau, but you didn't see a ton, which leads us right into the rushing stats. K9, 20 carries, 103 yards with a touchdown. Geno was 4 carries for 30 yards and a touchdown. And I didn't even put Charbonneau because guess what? His running stats weren't that impressive. I think he had one decent run, and then late in the game when they were trying to just run clock, kind of getting stuffed at the line, maybe trying to hit the edge a little bit too hard where he had a little cutback lane to get a few extra yards instead of getting a 0-yarder. But you love what you saw out of K9, especially in that second half. He came out like a bat out of hell and just really showed up.
Yeah, that's true.
Wide receivers and tight ends. I even throw Fant here. Lockett paced the team in catches and yardage, 6 catches for 77 yards, just looking like that security blanket for Geno that he was for Russell and has been for Geno. You got Charbonnet had 2 catches for 29 yards and a touchdown. DK, 3 catches, 29 yards. JSN, 2 catches for 19 yards. And Mr. Fant, 2 catches, 11 yards.
Don't like to see that. Really don't like to see that.
No. And I think this was really the process where the first half, you saw the inconsistent line play. Nothing was really materializing for the most part for this team. You saw Lockett do Lockett things coming up clutch, especially at the end.
He
They're
wasn't actually
making,
like falling down when he caught the ball. He
yeah,
was
one
trying to
handed.
he was trying to get some yardage. That was a good thing to see.
Yeah. DK had a pretty tightly contested throw that ends up getting broken up. JSN looked like it was going to be the JSN drive and kind of stalled out due to penalties. So you expect to see a little bit more from this offense, especially with all these guys playing together more and more here in week 2. But the story, I think, of this game for Seattle, and it's what you brought Mike Macdonald here to do, is the defense. You
Oh,
look at you had the Geno pick where Broncos are starting within the Seahawks 30 and they hold them to a field goal. D Williams on a punt return muffs it. They start within the 30 again. Guess what? They hold them to a field goal. You have a garbage time touchdown very late to Bo Nix where he runs it in. I mean, this defense showed up, and let's go. I've got a couple of guys down here. Love, 12
Julian Love.
tackles,
Oh boy.
one pass defended, one tackle for loss, one interception. Terrell Dodson, 10 tackles, 1 pass deflection, 1 tackle for loss. Rayshawn Jenkins, 6 tackles, all solos. Boye Mafe, 4 tackles, 2 for loss, 1 sack. Reek, 3 tackles, 2 passes defended, and an interception. And Derek Hall, 2 tackles, 1 sack on the day.
Also, Bo Nix, welcome to Club Reek.
Yeah, I posted that up last night when I did a little bit more rewatch. I totally sorry that I wasn't able to watch the game live, Reek. I won't do this to you again, except for maybe
Yeah.
this weekend. But
Bo
I'll
Nix
make
got
sure,
reeked.
dude.
It was great.
And Adam Archuleta, before Reek even picks off, he goes, "Oh no," because he threw into triple coverage.
Yeah, and then
This isn't Oregon anymore, big guy.
big ups to Kayvon Wallace
Yeah, forced
for
fumble.
peanut punching a ball out. Love that.
Dude,
Love that.
the one thing that I'll say as a whole, and I was getting pretty tired of Archuleta keep bringing it up, but what you saw, I didn't love the run defense at all times. That's where their big plays kind of came from. A little bit with Bo Nix there getting outside, but Javonte Williams, they kind of held him in check. McLaughlin was kind of the guy that was really getting some good run for them. But anytime one of their receivers, a ball was in the vicinity, there was a Seahawks plaster to him, and they were running a lot of zone, and he's a big man guy. They were running so much zone, and they had guys flying to the football. You look at Dodson and Jenkins and Love in particular, those guys were all over the field.
Yes. Every single play, it seemed like Baker or Dotson was there. And just the DBs, dude. Like you said, Julian Love with 12 total tackles on the day. Rayshawn Jenkins absolutely stomping dudes in the ground. Like the DBs came to play. And there was, I texted you it earlier. I was like, it was crazy that there was hardly any yak yards.
There was very minimal yak.
Yeah. It was, as soon as they caught the ball, they had a body planted in them. It was crazy. And that's something you'd love to see out of this. The team had 3 takeaways on the day, held them basically in check defensively all game. It's exactly what you expected out of a Mike Macdonald team.
I mean, if you don't muff the punt, that's 3 points off the board. Their defense scored 4 points with the safeties. All right, there's 7 points off the board right there.
Yeah, and then the garbage time DD.
This game was close for most of the game until you hit the third quarter, and then you kind of felt comfortable again. You were frustrated as all get out in the first half, starting slow, but you've got first time coordinators on both sides of the ball, a first time head coach, an offensive line that's playing together for the first time in any capacity outside of practice. And was it an ugly win? Sure. We're going to take that. This is a game that you should have won against a rookie quarterback, the quarterback that was the last quarterback taken in the first round. Right? Yeah. This is a game that you should win, and they did.
I mean, they literally held Bo Nix on 40-something pass attempts to 133 yards.
Crazy, right?
Like the check down king. The check down king is real. Like I believe the thing I read was like he was 24 for 42 with 133 yards, 2 picks, and no touchdowns.
Yep.
Like
you'll take that every Sunday.
Yeah.
All right. Cain, who was your offensive player of the game?
K9.
I knew you were going to pick him.
There's no doubt, right? He's the Seahawk outside of Geno, right? That did the most, right? He was amazing in the run game, 103 yards, plus the tutty. And yes, Geno got another touchdown on the ground, and he had a throwing touchdown, but K9 is what set the precedence in the second half. So that's my player of the game. Coach Red, who's yours?
Tyler Lockett for me.
I
He's
like
just
it.
he's just clutch. I mean, he ices the game on a great throw by Gino, really putting in the only place he could and just making a phenomenal catch to ice it. But he paced your wide receiver room. And this is a good trio when you look at JSN, DK Metcalf, and Tyler Lockett. I argue this is one of out of the trios. It's probably a top 5 in the league. You got to
Agreed.
get him the ball a little bit more, and you saw that with Lockett. And Lockett still doing Lockett things, getting some yards, going down, not taking the hits, protecting the body. He was questionable going into the week too. And to pace this team and really put the game on ice. And I knew that you were already going to pick K9, so that's why I went with Tyler Lockett.
Fair enough.
All right, who's your defensive player of the game?
That'll also be Julian Love. Figured it would go there. The dude was just adding on to the greatness he left off of last season, right? He was flying around. It's the typical safety that you see for the Seahawks, right? That we saw with Earl for so long, that Quandre did for a handful of years, right? It was something that he came into this game to set the tone on defense, right? He's the captain now. That's what you would kind of see it as, right? He's the
Yeah,
older guy in the room. It's his defense to kind of command. They got the extension done. He was whatever they whatever they call the all-star game.
he's a Pro Bowler.
Yeah, sure. Um, but the dude was everywhere. 12 total tackles. And that interception was so nasty.
Yep.
Bro, fading away or any heel touched.
I wish that he would have fell into the end zone.
I agree. Yeah. But that was just such a sick catch. Coach, who's yours?
Before I get into mine, the one thing that I really like seeing is Julian Love in a true free safety position because we saw him as a strong last year and he excels way more. And I know it's a small sample size in a rookie quarterback, but him playing free was so good because my guy that I wanted to pick, but I'm going to change it up. So I'm going to give you two guys. Rayshawn Jenkins, that dude was flying and thumping. 6 tackles, 6 solos, no yak. Like that
Yeah.
guy was flying down like Cam Chancellor, a smaller version. And this is a guy that has the ability to take the ball away. For him to be able to free up Julian Love to play that high safety role, I think that's his best role going forward in the NFL. And I think he really showed it come Sunday. I'm gonna go with a guy that I did not bring up on the stat sheet, but it's the big cat, Leonard Williams.
Oh,
5 quarterback hurries. He did not
yeah.
get home, but he caused penalties. He got in the face and caused errant throws because it's at points in time, especially in the second and third quarter. Big Cat was making Bo Nix see some ghosts out there, man. He
Yeah,
was
dude,
pushing
and
the
I
pocket.
don't think Byron Murphy played.
Oh, he did.
I
He
didn't see him at all.
he did not register a ton of stats, but he also had, I believe, at least 1 or 2 hurries, and he was doing a good job. He was getting a few
Yeah,
double
two
teams,
tackles.
and he was doing a pretty good job of pushing those guys back in the pocket and making Knicks move off spots. So between those guys on the inside, I would say that Draymond Jones still waiting for you to show up, big guy, especially with Uchenna Nwosu out.
Yeah,
I want to see it step up, but you love what you see out of Boye Mafe. Derek Hall getting that sack looked great in the preseason, and I was
mhm.
a little bit more excited to see him get some run with the first team, which you saw, and he comes up with the sack. And Boye Mafe and the other, also want to highlight Spoon because Spoon was all over the field, didn't register a ton of stats, but he came off on a blitz and he went for the inside shoulder instead of the outside shoulder. And Nix whips around and Boye Mafe absolutely runs him down and pushes him out of bounds for the sack.
For like a 2 yard loss. Yeah.
To see a guy that Bo Nix is sneaky athletic. I saw it at Oregon, and you knew that was his profile a little bit coming into the NFL. To see a defensive end just go stride for stride and just keep pace with that, Boy, Mafe is going to have a special year.
Dude, and I also want to give big shouts to Terrell Dotson, dude. The
Oh,
dude was such an animal. I mean, the pairing of him and Jerome Baker, this is their coming out party, right?
it's fun.
And
Well, Baker
and
didn't play at all during the preseason. They were both coming off injuries coming into camp. So it was fun to see them on the field together. But yeah, Dotson was money.
he was 10 total on the day and 9 solo
Yeah.
from from a linebacker.
And a TFL.
Dude, he was zooming. I again, this defense is not the Legion of Boom 2.0 like people are saying on the internet. This is the Legion of Zoom.
There's
And
zoomies.
these guys are fast.
Yeah, I might want to call them firecracker because they're a little bit undersized when you look at them across the board. But dang, well, do they pack a punch? They pack a wallop.
Sure.
All right.
Uh,
So looking ahead to week 2, we got a cross country flight playing the New England Patriots, who shocked I think almost everyone in the league by going in to Cincinnati and winning week 1 against the Bengals. And they won 16-10. Their defense played pretty darn well. They created a couple of turnovers that really changed the game, especially Cincinnati wins this game if their second or third string tight end who's just carrying the ball loosey goosey going towards the end zone. He's avoiding guys and kind of trying to reach, gets the ball knocked out at the goal line. And that's a
yeah.
different story of the game. But you've got we we thought it could be Drake May starting, but they're running with Brissett, who Brissett did some good things for Cleveland last year, right? He's a veteran. He's a guy that's played in New England before. He's not gonna lose you a ton of games, but he's also not gonna win you a ton of games because he's a veteran backup quarterback. He's not
Yep.
going to be that electrifying type guy, but he's going to limit the mistakes, and that's what he did. His day, if I did not write it down, but he was under 200
Decent
yards
enough.
passing, no picks, not a lot going on there. But what you have to look out for is that bowling ball of a man, Ramondre Stevenson. He toted the rock 25 times, or yeah, and was over 100 yards, clocked in with the touchdown. And that's what you're going to see out of this team is they want to play good defense under Gerard Mayo, also a first-year head coach, and they're going to run the ball. They were 39 rushes to 24 passes in their opening week. Some of those were scrambles by Brissett, so it's a little bit skewed, but not much. I mean, that's a 15 run versus pass discrepancy, right?
Right.
Most teams you're going to look at being about 50-50 or heavier on the pass. To see 15 extra rushes compared to passes, you don't see that much in today's NFL.
No, and I think that's going to be a real testament coming into the weekend, right? Is how well this defense does against the run. Uh, Outside of what one person on offense, they're not very good. But outside of Ramon J. Stevenson and I think one wide receiver,
Jalen Polk.
he didn't do well in week
Woo,
one. Just
woo, 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 woo.
Coach Red didn't do well in week
I know
one.
he didn't, but he's probably their one or two.
Or the other Husky did though. Jalen McMillan, baby.
Yeah, we're not talking about that. We're talking about New
Uh,
England still.
but I think if they can kind of keep Ramon J. Stevenson in check, and if Antonio Gibson plays, they can kind of keep him on the receiving end down. I think they'll be in all right position to win.
Yeah, and their defense was pretty stingy. You've got
I think Christian Gonzalez may be back
yep,
for them.
Christian Gonzalez is back, and he was a key piece. He was playing very well
He's very
before he got
good.
injured last year. But they only gave up 224 yards of total offense. You kind of look at this. You had no T. Higgins, Jamar Chase didn't
Was
get a ton of targets.
questionable, but and then in the post game he says, "Oh, you got to ask the head coach why he didn't target me more." Like,
Well, and I think that Joe Burrow is still not 100% healthy with that wrist either. So,
Right.
and then when you look at their running back room, deciding to move on from Joe Mixon and go with Zach Moss and Chase Brown, the problem is that they were down early, so they were forced to pass the ball a lot. They weren't able to get those guys really going. And I think that's something that the Seahawks need to do is they need to start faster, because if you let New England grind out the game, run the ball, shrink down your time of offensive possessions, you're going to be in a bad spot. You want, whether it's going to be Brissett or May, you want the quarterback to have the ball in his hands as a Seahawks fan for them to try and win the game. If they're just going to be running the ball left and right, that's not the biggest area of success, especially when you look at that's kind of where the big plays came from against Denver. So being able to hold them early, score early, don't commit the turnovers. I think that's going to be a big key to this game. You start a little faster, you make them throw the ball more, because no matter how you slice and dice it, when you look at this wide receiver and tight end room for them, there's no one that really just makes you super excited. So let those guys try to beat you.
Yeah.
Don't let Ramondre beat you.
Right. I agree. I think that Ryan Grubb can kind of cook something special up this weekend and get the receivers kind of all on the same page.
Well, I think that they just really need to start establishing the run a little bit sooner, which
Right.
opens up the play action pass. And once you can complete a couple of those, especially if you can get a big play to say DK, guess what? The world's your oyster at that point. You've got your whole offensive playbook is open. You have a lot of experience on this team in your playmaking spots, right? Fant's been in the league for a while. Yes, is he disappointed? Sure. You got Lockett and DK. K9, I would say, is going to be fighting for being a top 10 back this year. The
Dude,
guy's that
and in
electric.
all honesty, dude, K9's out, Sharp and McIntosh. I think they can hold down the fort pretty
And then you're
well.
probably also calling up George Halani off the practice
Yeah.
squad. I think that
Yeah.
K9's going to be good to go. It's going to be really interesting to see what the indication is on Fant as the week goes along. But this is also one of those where this is, I mean, McDonald's used to playing in the early window on the East Coast coming from Baltimore. And the Seahawks have been better in the last few years about those earlier games where it used to be just chalk up a loss, right? And they've gotten a
Right.
lot better at playing that style. But you're going in, it's the home opener for New England. They've got some buzz going around them because they unexpectedly won in week one. They've got a new head coach in Gerard Mayo. Similar situation to what the Seahawks had. Two legends, two old guys. You look at Belichick and Carroll, and now you've got the two youngest head coaches in the league right now, and Mayo and Macdonald going head to head in week two. But dang, the Seahawks have done some fun things against the Patriots. They've had one really bad thing, but they've had some good things. You mad,
That's
bro?
true.
You mad?
Uh, ugh.
And that's one last thing before we kind of tail out of here. The amount of former Seahawks that were around this team. I saw Sherm tweeting throughout the game and getting hyped. Marshawn Lynch is on the sideline giving Macdonald, a neck massage in the first or second quarter. Doug Baldwin was out there just to have those
Yeah.
guys around, because they hold a special place in this city. They brought home a championship, and those guys were very key in doing so. So
Right.
to have them back and embracing, and they said it on the broadcast, and I'm pretty sure because they said blank, but I think that I'm gonna use up our one curse word, because he's got a DNA strand, and there's 10 saying on what it is to make up a Seahawks DNA. And one of them is a quote from Marshawn Lynch. He's like, you can choose to run through the blank, is what she said. So I'm going to infer you can choose to run through the motherfucker or run around him. And what you saw in week one, they ran through him.
Yeah. Yeah, they
offensively
are.
and defensively. I mean, K9 suplexed the guy when he's got his feet tangled up.
That was so awesome, dude. I
But
lost my mind when that happened.
did they play a sloppy game? Yes. Did they play a team that they should beat? Yes.
Did they also, here's another thing, right? On years past, if they come out struggling that hard, right? You always come into the second half like, oh, here's some more of the same shit, all in all again. And then they came out with a different game plan. And I think that's something that we can all sit here and really take good lengths in the direction that this team is going. Because
Well,
there hasn't been a lot of change of direction after halftime
it's true.
in years
Usually it
past.
was, for the longest time with Pete, and it worked. So you can't fault it where it was like you'd pound your head against the wall trying to run. And if it just wasn't opening up, it's like Russ save us at the end. And you even saw that a little bit with Gino. It's like, hey, it's not really working right now, but you've got to feel good about your coordinators with Grubb making the halftime adjustments, especially the defense under Arden Durde and Mike Macdonald as a whole looked very good for week one. It's going to be really interesting to see if they can keep the momentum building before they host the Miami Dolphins at home, who also started slow but came out on top. So this is another good primer, a good road game early in the season where you should go take care of business. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is a low scoring affair, but I could also see this being a Seahawks blowout. I do not think that there's a New England Patriots blowout in the cards for this week.
I don't think so either.
No, but I do think that you could see this offense come out a little bit pissed off by their lackluster performance in week one and be like, all right, guys, let's F around and find out how quickly we can score some points in this game because we want to score them in bunches.
Yeah, I mean, they got to put that full offense on display somehow. So,
Yeah, and you can find everything we put on display on our social media. You can find me, your boy Coach Red, on X at the Real Coach Red, on Instagram at the Real _ Coach Red, TikTok at the Real Coach Red. Also find the show over on YouTube. Search Kicking It with Coach Red. Like, subscribe, hit the bell notifications, and leave a comment or two. Kane, where you at?
find me over on Twitter at K2406, TikTok, K0624. Also follow the show's socials over on Twitter and Instagram at Coach Red Pod. False. Do it, freaking do it.
And as always, stay fresh.
Stay fresh, peeps.
Peace.